the M CARBO trigger spring kit for the Ruger LCP Max. It's a spring kit that's supposed to take what's about a factory 6-pound trigger down to about a 3-pound trigger, at least. That's what M CARBO claims, and we're about to find that out. So I don't really need a lighter trigger pull for this Ruger LCP Max, but I figured it might be a nice little upgrade. It's not that you need it, but you know, that you want it. So this is my main carry gun. So I want it to be reliable, and I know that M CARBO has a really good track record, so I'm not too worried about the reliability. So this is coming out of a system. It is hot. We will put that ammo to the side. And let's go ahead and take this apart. I guess just going over the tools you're going to need. Of course, a hammer, a smaller flathead screwdriver. Not sure if that's exactly necessary, but we'll see here in a second. A 1/8 punch, 3/32 punch, and a 1/16 punch. And then, of course, I'm going to use my Lyman trigger pull gauge here to see what the weight is. And I was getting some sub 6-pound trigger pulls with this LCP Max, which is pretty phenomenal for a concealed carry factory trigger. So let's go and take a look. 5 pounds, 13 ounces. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. 5 pounds, 10 ounces. 4 pounds, 15 ounces, right about 5 pounds. I mean, I'd say this is on average about 5.5 pound trigger pull, which again is amazing for a factory conceal and carry trigger. You know, 10 years ago when these micro 380 mouse guns were hitting the market, most of them had like 10, 11, 12 pound trigger pulls. So it's really nice to see that Ruger's listening to the customers and making lighter trigger pulls from the factory. So we'll go ahead and test the trigger pull after the insulation is complete. And one thing about this firing pin spring that's right here, which we'll take a look at here soon, but this factory firing pin has a very audible sound to it. Let's go and get this again. And supposedly this M CARBO firing pin spring is supposed to have like some sort of dampening effect, so it's going to be quieter. It'll be nice to have something a little quieter, maybe if you're dry firing or just, you know, practicing or whatever. So let's go ahead and take a look at the kit. Well, I guess we'll go and dump it all out real quick. Let's see here. Attention, we advise that all parts purchased from our inventory be installed and inspected by a qualified gunsmith. Qualified. Let's go and dump everything out here. Of course, you don't want to lose anything. So we have right here, they give us 2 options. You can make it as light as possible. Nope, sorry, right here, the 10-pound one. You can make the trigger as light as possible, or you can make it in between with this 12-pound hammer spring. It's not a 12-pound trigger. It just means that the hammer spring itself is 12 pounds. And this right here is a 10-pound one. So, of course, I'm going to go with the light one. So, there you go. We're going to go with the 10-pound hammer spring. I believe that this right here, this little thing right here, is a trigger return spring. Then you have your firing pin spring right here. And then this right here is a very crudely 3D printed installation tool for your firing pin. So firing pin spring. But it's cool that they include things like this. I've had other M CARBO products in the past where they include these little 3D printed installation tools, and it's just a nice little touch. So good on them. All right, so to get started, you're just going to want to do a simple field strip of your LCP2 right here. You just simply sort of pry this little thingy up. There you go. And if you hold back the slide a little bit, it kind of helps. But we'll set this off to the side, and the slide just comes right off. We're actually going to be doing work on both the slide for the firing pin spring and then also the frame itself. And unlike the LCP2, the frame for the LCP Max is different. So you want to make sure that you are following the right instructions and that you don't follow the instructions for the LCP2, because the LCP2 has another takedown pin or something like that right here. So on the frame, we're going to start with this trigger pin right here. You can use the bench block. I've always just kind of used some painter's tape, but take a 3/32 punch. And this, I've never taken the pin out of here before. It should be easy, but it is set in there by the factory, so it might be a little tough the first time you do it. No, that was pretty easy actually. So you got that pin, you don't want to lose it. And then another thing you want to go ahead and do real quick is take the same punch and just go and push it on through there, and you'll get your little cap here thing off. So we'll go and stick that in there too. And then you're gonna have a fun time getting this out. So all right, so it's not too bad. What you wanna do is just take your 3/32 punch and go underneath the spring that's reaching over this pin and the pin itself, and just go and pry up. But you want to do it slowly as to not lose anything under spring tension, and you probably just kind of get it to pop like that. And so yeah, this thing just falls straight out. This would obviously, I can already see how dirty my hands are getting when you have everything all apart. It'd be a good time to clean everything up. So once you've got to that step right there, I believe that now you can just kind of work the chassis, whatever you call it, out of the gun. I'm sure you want to do it sort of evenly so it comes out nice and even. The back is kind of giving me trouble. If I push on it with my finger from it underneath. Yeah, there we go. It's just really tight in the back here. Wow, look at how dirty my fingers are. But I'm just gonna slowly work it out of there. And I believe as you're working it out, there it goes. You want to keep your fingers on the front of the, I forgot exactly what you call this, the chassis or something like that, the fire control group. But you don't want to lose. There's a spring right there as well as the spring right here. So I think now we're gonna just start taking pieces off. I guess this is like your slide stop bar right here. See if we can get this to kind of come out. Oh, there we go. If you get your fingernail underneath it right here, it'll make it really easy to take out. And then it's gonna take this little spring out right there. And once you flip it over, there's the trigger bar right here, which should also just kind of come right out. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna get it out. If I let's get a little help from my friends here. There we go. And that is under spring tension, so make sure you keep a finger right here on this trigger spring, which I think you're gonna have to take out the trigger in order to get to that spring. So let's give that a try. So one thing it looks like we're gonna need to do is not necessarily take off the whole trigger, but just the trigger blade right here, so you can get to this little pin underneath and be able to push it out in order to get the trigger spring out. But M CARBO does make a different trigger. It's like an aluminum, I think flat trigger for the Ruger LCP Max, but I like this trigger. I didn't really want to change it, but it looks like that we are probably gonna have to take your 1/16 punch and just drive out the trigger blade, the safety blade, whatever it's called. That actually comes out pretty easily. Getting your punch out is a little more difficult. There we go. And then there is a spring in there, so make sure you don't lose that. Shoot, I'm gonna have to figure out how to put this spring back in. I didn't really look to see how it is in there, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. Right, let's go and put that there, put that in there. And then underneath, so you're gonna wanna take your 1/16 punch here, and there's a little pin that we're gonna wanna push out. And I believe, yeah, it just comes out pretty easily. See if I can show you guys here. It's just this little guy right here. Go and put that in there. And now, I believe, look at that. Now we can take this out. So that's cool. All right. We're gonna go and set this aside over there. So luckily, I don't have to take the trigger apart any more than that. There's a couple more pieces we can remove, but I don't have to do it. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna come back to the trigger soon because we do need to put the new spring in as well as put the safety blade and spring back in there. But now we're gonna focus on the hammer spring. I think if you push down on the sear, yeah, it's kind of nice and easy. But if you push down on the sear, see, there's that pin right there, this one. And so when you're pushing down on the sear, it releases pressure. So you can just pull this pin out. And then while pushing down on the sear, you'll be able to pull your hammer straight out. Focus. So there it is. Okay, so this spring right here is what we're going to be replacing. And from what M CARBO was saying, you're gonna, I think, kind of want to bend the spring just a little bit. I think that's why you kind of need these flathead, this flathead screwdriver. Okay, I got it. It's kind of a pain in the neck. But what I did is I took my 1/16 punch and I put it on the very tip of the spring right here, and then just kind of held everything into place like this, hammered it to tap it, and it basically just knocked it straight out of there. So now, you know, with it straight out like that, you can take your flathead screwdriver and just kind of bend that up a little bit so that now when you go to remove it, it comes straight out like that. So there we go. That was definitely by far the most difficult part of this whole process so far. So, oops, actually, I didn't want to throw the hammer in there because we're gonna go ahead and take out our 10-pound hammer spring right here and install that. Okay, so this hammer spring right here, this little piece, is closed as well, so they want you to kind of pry that open. So let's go and do that. Just, I think, enough, you know, to get it around the trigger pin there, or the, what is this, the hammer pin. You want to take your hammer and find that little groove in there. Go. Oh, that actually wasn't too tough to put in, but there we go. Just like that. And then I believe you can take some pliers here and kind of close that down. That this little, where is it? There we go. This little gap right there. You know, just give it a little squeeze. It don't need much. So once you got your spring on the hammer, we're gonna go ahead and slide everything through again. I believe push down on the sear, slide it into place, line up the hole. Go ahead and fish out your pin. I believe it was this one. Got a few pins in there. You might want to pay attention to which one's which. But yeah, this seems like the right one. You could probably stick a punch through there to make it a little easier. But kind of wiggle things around maybe. There we go. There we go. All right. Cool. Okay, so next, the trigger return spring is the next little thing that we're gonna do here. And this might take some finagling. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in there like they say at the 5 o'clock position, this little leg right here sticking in the 5 o'clock position. And I think you're going to want to line everything up. Grab your, go ahead and grab your little trigger pin that you took out. It's right here. It might be kind of easier if you have either like a pair of pliers or something that you can hold it onto while you stick it in there, because my big fat fingers won't really quite fit. I'm just gonna get started in there and we'll see what happens. You might need to sort of move things around a bit until you get it to seat. Actually, there we go. I just got the seat in there. And now this is, yeah, that's cool. This is held in there. It's not coming out. Okay, and now I'm gonna try to attempt to stick this, oh man, that is tiny. This tiny little trigger blade pin right here. And I believe it was this spring right here to put the tiny little safety blade in, right, into the trigger. Yeah, I don't see anything else in there. That's got to be it right there. Okay. So I believe how we're going to do this, there is a hole on the bottom of the trigger, and we're just going to go ahead and drop, whoops, gonna hold the hammer spring back. We're going to drop that safety blade spring in there. Hopefully a little easier than I'm doing it right now. But again, big fat fingers. Come on. There we go. Okay. So now that's in there. Now I gotta remember exactly which way this goes. I mean, it can only go one of two ways, right? You kind of want to have the safety blade orientated this way, with the fatter side sticking this way if you got the trigger orientated like this. And then there's these two little pegs that are on the blade, one on each side, and they're gonna just slip right into this little slot. And then with your spring in there, don't make sure you don't lose the spring, but there you go. Then you got everything back together. Well, not quite yet. We still have to get the pin in there. And one thing you can do actually when you get the blade in there, you can hold it from here and that'll keep everything together. So I'm going to drive the pin in from the side that it came out of, just to keep everything lined up. All right, once you get the pin started in there, just go ahead and tap her on in there. And there you go. You got your trigger, spring, and all that stuff in there. And we're gonna get to that, I think, next. Now that we got all the springs in there, we're gonna go ahead and take our trigger bar and how does this go? I think it goes this way. Yeah, it looks good. I think you want to keep pressure on here and then go ahead and bring your new spring around and lock it right in just like that. That was pretty easy to do. But again, just keep some pressure on here. You don't want that to go flying out. And we're gonna go ahead and put on the magazine catch. Let's see here, that would go this way. Yep, just like that. I think you want to snap it all in there. There we go. Yeah, so now it's freely moving. And let's go ahead and take the magazine catch spring, or the slide, whatever you call that thing, you know, this little spring right here, and just wedge it on in there. And I think you're good. That's it right there. All right, so while holding tension on the two springs right there, we're gonna go ahead and ease the fire control group back down into the frame. And I think you want to start with the trigger side like that, and then before you get the trigger side all the way in, just go ahead and bring the rear part down Oh, I'm gonna make sure that this little pin right here is not poking out, that pin right there. And it should just kind of fit down in there. There we go. Just like that. You might have to kind of rock it in a little bit, but yeah, look at that. There we go. That you hear bouncing around, that's the hammer spring. But before we get to the hammer spring, we want to go ahead and take our pin right here, and I forgot if there's like a certain side it came out of, but yeah, we're just gonna go like this. And of course, hammer it the rest of the way back in. There we go. Nice and easy. All right, so almost done here. We got the hammer spring pin thingy right there. Just go ahead and put in the grooves that it sits in, and go ahead and take probably the 3/32 punch right here, and go and hook it with it and bring it. Okay, it just popped right out. Let's try that again. Go ahead and put the pin in, and then I'm actually gonna get maybe a longer pin. I think these are kind of stubby. Give me 1 second. Yeah, actually right here. I think this really small screwdriver will probably do the trick. So you just want to grab your spring. Make sure that you go over the hammer spring pin, as well as bringing the red little hook over the pin. And now I believe we can just, you want to hold it right here maybe with your thumb and pull the punch out, screwdriver out, whatever you're using, and that will allow it to fall into that left groove right there. Check it out. I'm not sure what the right groove is for. Maybe it's just like ambidextrous. Ambidextrous. That's how you say that word. So anyways, all right. That I believe is, almost the entire frame. We just got to put this thing back in. So one minor setback, and it's something that I just realized when I was putting it all back together, but the hammer spring cap right here, I accidentally broke it when I was putting the punch through to take it out in the first place. I should have been a little more gentle with it, I guess. So I've got some super glue on there to hopefully get the tension back in this little piece right here. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm just going to set this aside and move on to our firing pin spring, which will be the last little thing that we have to put in. So we're going to go ahead and disassemble, of course, our slide right here. Take the barrel and recoil spring out. And you probably want to go with the 3/32 punch, I think, because we're going to go ahead and drive out this pin right there. So let's do that. Of course, if it is the first time doing this, it's going to be a little tough. There we go. Yep. And then that probably keeps spring tension on right there, so I'm just gonna pull this punch out. Yep, and make sure nothing goes flying, because there we go. I think now we can just take our firing pin out. Look at that little thing. It's pretty darn dirty. I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up actually while I got it out. But let's take that out, and then there should be, I think, a spring in there, right? Slowly coming out. Here it comes. 3 taps is the charm. So this is this is what we're replacing right here. This is the factory spring. We're going to replace it with this much lighter M CARBO stainless steel spring. Look at the difference between the two. All right. So supposedly, if you don't replace this spring, you're going to get a lot of light primer strikes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stick the firing pin spring onto the firing pin. And there's a little notch on the firing pin itself. You want that notch to be pointed towards the top of the slide. So in this case, I'm going to point it down. And let's go ahead and slide it on in there. It actually looks like the firing pin's going to sort of want to work itself in one direction, but let's go ahead and, okay, so we got it in there. This is where we're going to use this tiny little piece right here. And I believe that you're just going to depress the firing pin like this and then drop that piece on in there, and it holds it in place. And basically the reason why you need it to hold in place is so that you can get your firing pin back in. And you can take your punch too and just make sure that you got a clear view of the hole straight through. And then let's go ahead and take the roll pin right here and start it from, there's a bigger side, so we're going to start it here on the bigger side. And go ahead and start it. And actually, I think this is what the 1/8 punch is for. We haven't used the 1/8 punch, but basically it's gonna tell you when it's fully seated, because the 1/8 punch can't go any further. There we go. You kind of want to listen for that sort of dud, sound. You can tell when it's fully seated because it makes a slightly different sound. But I think now you just go ahead and pull this out, and look at that. Your firing pin is now back in. Oops, sorry, you can't really see. But yeah, it has full spring tension. That's what you want to see. All right, so that's basically everything. Let's go ahead and put the slide back together here. Let's start with our barrel. I'm not gonna, I do need to clean this gun, but I'm not gonna do it right now, just for the sake of time. Oops. There we go. And now, actually, before we do that, I guess let's go ahead and try and stick this cap on. If the cap doesn't retain tension, I already looked it up on Ruger. I think it's like shopruger.com, where you can buy all these little tiny parts, and this is only $4. So this is kind of retaining some tension. So I'm just gonna push it on in there, and I'm gonna buy a new one from Ruger because whatever. It doesn't, it's not the end of the world. But I'm gonna go ahead and stick the slide back on. You wanna make sure that your hammer is back like that. All right, and then go ahead and depress the, or bring the slide back just a tad, hold it with your thumb. Then you can, whoops, and then you can go ahead and stick the pin back in. Yeah, I already noticed quite a lighter pull, I'll say. So that right there is the reset. And it's light. It is light. This thing's gonna want to fall out on me. Luckily, we don't really need that right now. So anyways, let's go ahead and do a trigger pull test. And one thing, first off, before we measure the weight, that is a less audible click whenever you pull the trigger. Maybe I'll do some comparisons just to kind of show you side by side. Has a very audible sound to it. Let's go and get this again. But yeah, you don't have that dong sound whenever you pull the trigger. And before we were looking at about a 6-pound trigger. Let's see where we're at now. Whoop. My bad. Ooh, 3 pounds, 3.8 ounces. Oh, whoops. Oh my gosh. Can you all see that? 2 pounds, 13 ounces. That is crazy. £2, 12.9 ounces. 2 pounds, 13. I mean, that's definitely, I'd say, a sub 3 pound trigger pull, which is crazy. Yep, 2 pounds, 15.4 ounces. So that's consistently pulling at just under 3 pounds. Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, it feels really good. That is cool. Oh man. Yeah, so this thing, I'm gonna let it cure overnight. Go ahead and take out the LCP Max to the range tomorrow. And I think that it's gonna be very reliable, but obviously I gotta test it before I can sign off on it. So next thing you see, we'll be doing some shooting. All right, so we're out here with the LCP Max, minus the hammer spring cap, and then 2 extra 12 round magazines. The 12 round magazines are loaded with this Norma range and training, and then the 10 round magazine that's in the gun right now is loaded with what I usually carry, which is this Norma MHP. So all in all, 34 rounds, and we're gonna fire them off in rapid succession and see if this Ruger LCP Max is still reliable. I'm going to start here with some of the Norma MHP. It's monolithic hollow point. That's what that stands for. These have a pretty high recoil for most 380s, so if anything rattles this gun apart, it's going to be these MHPs. Alright, I got my 2 12 round. This is Norma range and training, basic 380. Ooh, what we got here? It's a light primer strike. I'll show you guys that in a second. I was kind of fumbling around there and accidentally allowed another round to pop out, but we got one in the chamber. All right. So far, light primer strike. I'd probably just blame that on the ammo. There we go. I hope that this can focus. Yeah, let me turn this screen around so I can see if it's focusing. So as you can see, hopefully, there is a light primer strike. And I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can fire this one off. I've never had a light primer strike with the Norma range and training. And remember it's saying that if you didn't replace the firing pin spring that you could have light primer strikes. So that's a little worrisome. Yeah. Or it could just be I think that's a bad round. Since it didn't go off again, that is the telltale sign of a bad primer. So for a complete total of 60 rounds, I'm gonna finish off this box of 50 right here. I've got the mags loaded up. So far, I gotta say, not having this little hammer spring cap right here hasn't really been giving me any trouble. I did order a new one, by the way. It's only $4, so 12 more rounds, Norma range and training. The trigger is phenomenal, I will definitely say. That's such a nice trigger. I can go really quickly. So let's try this. By the way, I didn't clean this gun since I last shot it after the installation. I didn't even put any oil on it, so it's running really well. All right, let's see how fast I can do this one. My trigger finger started to get a little tired at the end. All right, just 2 more rounds now for a total of 60. And nice. All right, I love it. Such a good trigger. Good job, M CARBO. All right, so installation wasn't really too bad. It was a little tough at times, but if you got any kind of history with working on your own guns, you could probably figure it out. Just pay attention, stick with the steps. Don't try and go ahead of yourself, and you'll have yourself a really nice trigger in your LCP Max. So, thanks for watching. Did y'all hear that? It's the last day of rifle season for deer hunting. So that was a big boom. I was shooting the heck out of this steel target right here. I'm talking kind of softly because I don't want to disrupt any of the hunters that might be around here. And before it gets too dark, I'm going to put my orange on. But anyways, yeah, just wanted to show you guys shooting the heck out of this steel target on this beautiful fall evening. Oh man, can't get much better than this.